Alright, so I've learned a lot from Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 3 on kind of what I'm looking for in a point of sale. I don't really have the first two versions because they were actually modifications of software called Lemon POS. But I do have, this is Mark 3 right here. It's a network point of sale, so this connects to a database running on, well, in this case, a computer at a store 3 blocks away. It goes over the internet to do that. This is in production. It's a fully functional program. I've got, this is the sales page. I've got an inventory app, more designed to work on a tablet or a phone, various clients, gift cards, product manager. And at the time, this layout actually made sense. So I could do things like special discount chips, or just double click it, I guess. So there's some JavaScript in there to figure out can and bottle deposits, and then configuration receiving kiosk, all kinds of fun stuff. And then I have down here just a basic something called a flip chart or a product browser, if you like. And then regular functions, suspensions, just transaction suspensions, transaction browser to reprint receipts, cancel transactions, things like that. Product lookup, I don't know, to find, and you've got your drop downs here. This is using Qt controls, which work very well. It gives you a very native look, which I thought was great because you get them for free, but it's not actually the case. Adding miscellaneous items, clear transaction, reprint receipt, and a whole bunch of nice little admin functions on there. Now the problem with this is going into it, I wasn't quite prepared for all the functionality that we're going to use. I couldn't really sort out what was going to be used frequently and what would be used very infrequently. Going into Mark 4, I basically changed how it worked. So over here, you'll see it's a Node.js application. Uses something, Node DBI, to do persistent queries. What that means is I can, for example, do a product lookup, and it will associate that query with the connection. So I can page through the results. There could be 30,000 results without having to requery every time in case it's an expensive query. Okay, so this is going to be Mark 4, 4.5, 5. I haven't really decided. There's a lot of iterations to go through. Configuration is a little bit simpler. As you can see, it's very much tailored for a touchscreen and a small screen. So I've constrained it to 640 by 480 because that is the resolution that I want this to work on. The sales screen is, you'll notice that it looks a lot nicer. That was a very conscious choice. I've realized that once it goes into production, little pretty things just will never, ever, ever happen. So you want to take care of it as soon as possible. This is an example of paging results. So if I go to unlisted, for example, this is a huge category. And you see the little jitter. And it's because I found that the network code of Qt is supposed to be on its own thread. And for whatever reason in QML or QQuick, it doesn't always work that way. But everything happens on that Node.js server. This is the client, this is the server, and you can see all the various stuff going on there. So basically it just encapsulates the information into a WebSocket packet or into a JSON packet and transmits or transceives it over a persistent WebSocket. That includes authorization and whatnot. But you can add your products here. The subtotal, GST, and total are all actually calculated on the server side, and then it transmits that back. So that has its ups and downs. On a LAN, that won't be a problem, and it keeps your database tidy. You don't really worry about who gets the next transaction ID and things like that. I've also limited the functions that we use very rarely. So for example, end of day, you will call that once per shift. Cash in and cash out happens hopefully once or twice per shift at most. Whereas suspensions are going to be integrated into tabs. So when you suspend a transaction, it's no longer going to be a scary thing to do. That is, right now, in the previous version, if you were to suspend a transaction, if you want to add to it, you would have to resume the transaction, scan an item, and then resuspend it with that information. The new version over here, that won't be a problem. So this takes quite a while to boot up, and part of that is in the handshake process, which is quite heavy. But I'll just show you quickly a suspension. I'll just add something here. And you'll also notice that it's not necessarily quicker to do it this way. So that was the current production version. And then I'll just go over here, and you can see my latency down here. The nice thing about having a hand-rolled server client infrastructure is you can do things like that. Well, MySQL theoretically can do that as well, but through libdbi and the Qt framework, you cannot. So there we go. That blurring tells you that it's recalculating. All the blocking functions or things that could double up are handled properly. So over here, for example, if I were to total this up, theoretically I can hit commit too fast and double commit it. The button is actually disabled, but the way Qt Quick works is you do a property change, it dispatches that as a signal. This took a long time to figure out. Another issue is, I'm just going to go into the hardware here. Where are we? Devices. Okay, so I've got this is actually using a hand-rolled raw USB communication, I don't know what you'd call it, library, I guess, that talks directly to the USB device. This talks to an evdev interface. This is evdev, and this is libnfc. So it's actually talking to a lot of hardware, and this is just the tip of the iceberg when you consider I've got a receipt printer, a thermal printer, and a full-size printer for doing reports. Now, I don't want to keep my point of sale open to do all this. So, oh, and yeah, I forgot about this. It can also drive multiple point of sale or fuel dispensers. So in that case, in the case of the fuel station, it runs two simultaneously. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and I don't think the onus should be entirely on anything that has a user interface, a graphical user interface. That's just silly. Okay. Whereas over here, based on the client-server architecture, the server over here is going to do, isn't even going to handle that. So there's going to be another little MCU, probably an Arduino, or well, maybe something better like a Raspberry Pi or a Banana Pi, that will have a USB connection to things like the printers, thermal printer, barcode scanner, things like that. And that would be a dedicated hardware interface, and it would tie in directly to the point-of-sale server. It will have an ID associated to it. So this is station 10 or lane 10 if you like, and that will have that identified as well. This is all in the game plan, but mostly I've been focusing on the functionality. So going forward, there are a few considerations. So for example, suspensions, I want to be able to offer a name, put a name to a suspension, just to keep track of what's what. And this is, I'm probably going to implement it the same way I did this. So if you notice, that subtotal field is only there when it's pertinent to what's on the screen. I didn't take this off the screen because it is actually what you use to close a transaction. So I wanted to leave that there. Now that is not entirely intuitive, but this is the number one thing people will do on a transaction. So it's okay to have to explain that to a new employee. They will remember it eventually, usually very quickly, because they have to do that all the time. You have to have a button somewhere on a touch screen particularly, so that's where I decided to put it. We'll reuse the total. This we don't need to reuse. We don't need to keep it up there all the time, so it hides. So a suspension will work the same way. It'll look the same here, except I'm thinking I'll just slide this down and put the name, an editable name field, something like this, and maybe a phone number. So that's how the editing works. And that's the state of the game.